speaker. So for today, we're going to do class from about 9 to 10, snacks, because we believe in snacks, from 10 to 10:30, and then we will be meeting up at the Museum of Life and Sciences, and we will be starting at 11, which says to me, I would want to be there before 11, okay? We'll meet back by the Butterfly House, so if you're not familiar with the museum, what that means is you're going to drive in, you're going to park, you're going to go, a museum, and then you're going to turn to your right, and there's a Butterfly House back on the right, okay? And I'll be out there wildly flagging people down as well, so I'll try to catch you, but that's where we are. We'll be seeing their rain gardens and their cistern setups, which are really, really cool, and we should be done around our normal time, if not a bit earlier. For next week, we will be going online next week. It works for our speakers, so that's what we'll be doing. So what we'll be doing is we'll be doing a Zoom for the first section. That'll be lawns and lawn alternatives and compost, so right, that's our 9 to 12:30. And then we have our optional Briggs field trip at 2 p.m. next week, right? So we'll be meeting out at the Briggs Avenue Community Garden. I'll share all this information in your email. Okay, so don't worry. Remember, you never actually have to remember anything I'll tell you. I will email you about it.
That's good.
Yeah. I understand. I like it. That's how my brain works too. And then the only other thing I want to kind of put a bug in your ear about is that we are firming up a date for our annual recognition event. This is a big deal that we do over at Duke Gardens. It's kind of an evening get-together, potluck, soiree. We shout you guys out. We shout out people who are kind of the real, we give some recognition awards. And we are expecting that to be the evening of May 25th. So I'm sorry if you can't make it. I have already rescheduled it a couple times. Don't worry, it's a great event though. It's a lot of fun. So if you can make it.
Right away to meet all the other master gardeners.
Yes, this is crucial. This is how you meet everybody. This is your first big party with the crew, okay? So like, it's not on the internet yet, but it will be on the internet. We don't have a time yet, but it'll probably be it'll be an evening event. It will be May 25th. More details forthcoming. I'm just kind of telling you guys, like, if you were to pencil in, like, May 25th, p.m., right, you'd be good.
All indoors.
Indoors and outdoors. We tend to take over, we're at Duke Gardens, so we're in the main center, and then we're also spilling out onto the terrace typically, so we have a little bit of indoor-outdoor space, depending on what folks are comfortable with and kind of what we need at the time.
So that's a Thursday, maybe?
Yes.
I'm saying from 4 to 10.
Love it. Love that energy. It's a fun event though, and it is a great way to really meet and get to know the larger group. So, all right. Remember, details will be in your email. So, okay, I'm going to hand it over to Mitch. Mitch is our area specialized agent for watersheds and water quality. We are super, super lucky because he is based out of Wake, which is awesome because whenever we have weird questions, we can email him real fast and be like, Mitch, what's going on?
Weird water questions.
Yeah, weird water questions. Keep them to water. And just an excellent resource, so much fun to work with all the time. He helped us put in our cisterns. He's just been an invaluable resource for everyone kind of in this community. So, Mitch, I'll let you take it away.
All right, thanks, Ashley. Oh, wow. I haven't even spoken yet. You guys don't even know if I'm going to do a good job.
You might not get claps at the end.
Yeah, we'll see if I get one at the end. How about that? Well, thank you. And just want to say, I work with master gardeners a lot. We really appreciate an extension all the good work that you all do. And I can't say that enough. It really, really appreciate it. You guys are enthusiastic, excited, and so I'm excited to be here to kind of show you kind of the stuff that I do. So, a little self-disclosure, everybody kind of, I enjoy learning about what other people do in their backgrounds. So I'm a 10th generation farmer. I grew up in Middletown, Delaware, which is east of Annapolis, about 45 minutes. And at the time that I grew up there, we were out in the middle of nowhere. It was basically an hour from back roads to Wilmington, Delaware. So, and that's kind of like a suburb of Philadelphia now. So that was the big city. And so we were down there. And since they built an interstate highway, kind of like 540 down there, to get everybody from Philadelphia down to the beaches. Rehoboth Beach is a big draw down there. And so we had dairy cows. We had an ice cream plant in town. So we sold all of our milk to the ice cream plant. And we also, interestingly enough, and this ties into my talk, is that we were in the town watershed, and the town was very excited about us keeping cow manure out of the drinking water. Imagine that. Yeah. How much manure does a dairy cow, this is really off the subject, is produce in a day? It's a lot. It's a correct answer. It's a lot. It's about 100 to 120 pounds. Yeah. They are milk producing machines. A cow, I mean, they're genetically engineered animals for the most part. They'll make 40 or 50,000 pounds of milk. It's interesting, it's pounds. Pounds of milk a year. And a lot more manure, because you got to keep them fed and the feed. It's all very scientific. Well, very interesting. So the town actually gave us money to do practices to keep all this manure out of the drinking water. A lot of these practices, interestingly enough, are larger versions of the practices I'll talk about today that we can employ in urban areas to capture runoff and to keep fertilizers and pet waste. And sediment is the #1 pollutant in North Carolina. Sediment. Now where's the sediment come from? Building, farming, construction, right? DOT, the biggest department in the whole state, is madly building roads, right? Wake County can't build enough schools. We have people moving in. I'll talk about that a little bit. Most of the sediment locally in urban areas comes from eroding stream banks. And so, just to plant a bug in your ear, Ashley, if you guys want to do a stream bank repair training, we can do it. And I'll talk a little bit about it. I've got some pictures here. I'm on, if any of you are on social media and you want to see pictures and stuff of what we do, I'm on Instagram under Stream Bank Repair, and I'm on Twitter with a really weird handle that's like First Flush Guy. Everybody thinks I'm a plumber. I'll show you why I do that, because if it rains on an impervious area and it runs off into a stream, that's called the first flush. And that's the most polluted. So it's first with 1 ST _ flush _ guy, and you'll see all the pictures and stuff. But we'll go through this. So I'll stand over here so we'll have to look over my shoulder. So these are some of the stream sites that we get involved in. And I cover the whole state, so I'm a victim of my own success. Do you want me to stand still if you're taping it? Okay. I move around, I could do.
It's an adventure. No, you're good.
It'd be a challenge, I could do this, but I could do, okay, all right, you let me know. I kind of wander. So, I'm a victim of my own success. I used to work in 17 counties, and I like to say that everybody that hired me retired. And so, they've given me the whole state plus the eastern band of the Cherokee, which I'm gonna go see, which is interesting because I've been in contact with some of the folks out there. So, let's see if this works. Okay, there we go. So, some interesting North Carolina tidbits, okay? I always tell people, people ask, why is North Carolina interested in water quality? If you made $30 million in tax money annually, and that's probably a low estimate, you'd protect that. I mean, that's a source of income, right? That's people that buy lift tickets. That's people that go hiking in the western forest. That's people that go to Asheville and canoe and tube down the French Broad River. That's people that go to the ocean, go to the beach. So 30 million annually in water-related tourism. 300 people move into Wake County not Wake County. 70 people move into Wake County. 300 in North Carolina annually. Or daily, sorry. Daily. Let me get some more coffee. 300 daily, 70 daily in Wake alone, and you can do the math for annually. You don't hear much about North Carolina in terms of migration of population. You hear a lot about Arizona, right? You hear people moving out of California. I hear that. Texas, big influx. Florida, big influx over COVID. North Carolina's around 4th. You hear Arizona, right? North Carolina's around 4th. And the point of this is, excuse me, more people mean more buildings, because everybody hopefully lives in a home of some sort with a roof, right? That's good. Roads, impervious areas, if you're not familiar, anything that sheds water when it rains, so collect runoff. So that would be stormwater. And urban stormwater is the #1 pollutant in North Carolina. So how much does it rain here annually? And where does our water come from? Where does our rainfall come from? It generally comes from the Gulf of Mexico and heads up. You see the band, heads up, and of course we have the mountains here, right? So we're in this band of 45 to 50 inches with some really high local areas, like for example, out near Brevard, Lake Toxaway, which doesn't sound like a very appealing name. They get almost 90 inches a year. Now, why is that? Well, it's right. The moisture laden air has to rise up over the mountains, and of course, cold air doesn't hold as much moisture, and it drops out, so they get 90 inches. Now, my son Zach is right here in Reno. Reno gets a bad rap. I've been in Reno several times. People are friendly. It's the kind of place where you go into the food store and people like strike up a conversation with you. Hey, what are you doing? Where are you from? Da, da, da. Really nice little town. I mean, it's got that seedy kind of like low budge Las Vegas kind of thing going. And there are parts of that, but that's nice. But where he works is here. You know what's there? Truckee, California. It's up in the Sierras. Guess how much snow they've gotten this year? They got 5 feet just 2 weeks ago in one storm. They got 5 feet. They're up at 7,000 feet. They get 200, 250 inches of snow annually. Typically, I think around 400 this year. So Lake Tahoe ski area is there. That's why he lives in Reno, because he can't afford, it's a resort town. He can't afford to live there. So he's in Reno. So they get 8 inches in Reno, and they get like 50 inches in Truckee, just because of that rain effect, right? It's coming up over the mountains, and it's dropping all the moisture off the Pacific. So, come on, there we go. All right, stormwater regulated areas in North Carolina. If you're in an area where there is a color associated with it, there is some type of stormwater or water quality rule. Either a buffer protection rule, which means you can't cut down trees next to a stream, right? So we have those buffer protection rules, or there's some type of a high quality water where we need to protect drinking water. Some of that's called phase 2. So there's outstanding resource water. So you can find this on websites. I just want to, let you be aware of this, because we are in an area that's protected, either by the Noose rules, the Jordan Lake rules. The Jordan Lake is the headwaters for the Cape Fear, which is the largest watershed. So Durham is kind of at the confluence of several watersheds, the Noose and the Cape Fear mainly. And so you're producing drinking water off these streets today that go either into Falls Lake, the drinking water supply for Raleigh, the 700,000 people, or the Cape Fear in Jordan Lake, and that's where Apex and Cary and the western municipalities get their water in on down the line to the Atlantic. Okay.
Is that, Mitch, at the bottom it says Pittsburgh Rain Garden Certification 2014. Does that mean these,
Oh.
all this information is from that many years ago?
Some of it is. I did not do a good job of removing
Oh,
that.
that's okay.
That if you're into PowerPoint, you can make a master slide. That's all that is. So at some point, I forgot to take off. This slide was in a
I
training.
was just gonna say in 9 years, weather-wise and rain-wise, things have changed quite a bit.
It's changed some. Yeah, it's changed some.
It's significant to make a difference.
We get these seasonal variations,
Yeah.
and we get we can get, like in 2008 we had a drought,
Yeah.
and it didn't rain at all. And then now this last winter it's been very wet.
Yeah.
So separating out the climate change, which is a long, steady trend, or just some type of seasonal variation, which we get. And with farming, you're really aware of it, because you put all your money out there and it's droughty and everything dies, or you get flooded. So yes, these have expanded since, I would say, these regulated areas, and depending on the season, we can get,
Because last summer it seems unusual to me. I mean, super hot, and not as much.
a lot of these numbers that we get are like 100-year averages.
Uh-huh.
So, but I do hear the scientists saying that we've got this climate change
Yeah.
that's occurring. And exactly what that is, I'm not sure. But look, it's kind of like following the stock market every day. It can drive you crazy if you do it, right? But if you look at it over 10 years, it's still a good place to go,
Yeah.
with some portion of it. It's kind of like that. So what we're focusing on and talking about today are these top of the watershed practices. So we have bottom of the watershed. Let's start with that. So what do I mean by bottom of the watershed? That would be Jordan Lake or Falls Lake, right? But, again, great big reservoir, drinking water reservoir. So if somebody called you and say, hey, I live on Falls Lake and I see water quality problems, well, there's not a whole lot you can do at that point. But how about at this parking lot here, top of the watershed, and we're in LB Creek here. Is this LB Creek, close to LB?
Yeah.
So what can we do there? Well, we could put a rainwater harvester to irrigate landscapes. We can put rain gardens in. We'll see out at the museum. I hope you come out there. We have a rainwater harvesting system, a great rain garden that's been there for about 20 years and is still functioning. So we're collecting water off of these urbanizing areas, and all of this is human activity that affects water. And we're trying to work with that. So to give you an idea of pre-development, woods, right, impervious areas, lots of pervious areas, or post-development or post-urbanization with lots of concrete and roads, to kind of give you an idea. So take a look at the difference here. Right, almost complete opposites. We have 10% runoff, we have 55% runoff. And again, these are generalized. If we're on sand, it's a lot more. If we're on clay, like here, it's a lot less. But these hold true generally. They should take a look across the state. And so we have a lot more runoff, and this is what damages our streams. And is stream water and stormwater filtered? Does it go to a stormwater treatment plant? In some cases it does. Philadelphia, where I grew up, has a combined sewer system, where the stormwater from the streets goes in with the human waste, and they treat it out to the Delaware River. Unless it rains 5 inches, and they just dump it in the river. That's exactly what happens. They just dump it in the river, so it doesn't get treated. So that's called a combined system. Portland has it too, in various areas, Portland, Oregon. And we've been out there when it's rained at a conference, and you see the manhole covers blow off the sewer as you're walking down the street. The dancing manhole covers of Portland, and people just seem to, people are driving down the road, and you see the manhole cover going, because there's so much air pressure in the system. So I'm glad it didn't like open up and spew like everywhere. So, okay, so let's look at it from another way. So we have flow in cubic feet per second, very engineerish of us, and then time. So this is going to be a hydrograph. In other words, the amount of water that is flowing off of a watershed during a rainstorm. So here's our happy little watershed with our little cloud, and it's raining. So take a look at that watershed. What do you observe in that picture with that watershed? What would you say? Is there a lot of impervious area, or is it all pervious? It's all native? It's a big sponge is what it is. With a few exceptions, we have something going on here. I don't know if that's a golf course or a community, a few houses here and there, but generally pretty much a great big sponge. So if it rained an inch here, the hydrograph would look something like this. So it starts to rain, right? We get no flow, we're measuring rainfall, and now, as it continues to rain over maybe 6 hours, 12 hours, we get a little flow into the river. This is measuring flow into the river, and then as it stops, it kind of tails off very slowly. And if you were good at math, you could calculate the area under that curve, and it would give you cubic feet per second that's flowing into that river. And That'd be a nice little study to do. Okay, so, can't have that, we gotta tear down all the trees and put a big box store up, right? So now, what is our hydrograph gonna look like on the same rainstorm? All right, so so we've got more runoff arriving faster. This is what tears out streams. And also, since all those pollutants are not filtered, we all bacteria, pet waste, fertilizers, everything else flowing into the rivers and the streams. So how do we get back to here? Stormwater control measures, or what's called SCMs, stormwater control measures. The old term was BMPs, best management practices, or some engineers call them big muddy ponds. And Durham is the land of big muddy ponds. Why do engineers do that? They're cheap. All you have to do is dig a hole of a certain size and you can throw water into it. And they're easy to calculate how much volume you have in there. It's supposed to capture the first inch, so you can calculate that. It's easy to calculate. And so you'll see other practices, a lot of practices out there. But that's what they're trying to replicate as much as possible with this new technology. It's also called GSI, Green Stormwater Infrastructure. So you'll see that term around there, and you'll see pictures. I think I may have some. So, lost in suburbia. Anytime you have a watershed that's over 10% to 15% impervious area, you're going to see stream bank degradation. You're going to see increased flows, you're going to see streams being degraded, you're going to see waste in the water, and it's just kind of the price of urbanization. So you'll see that. Some great big driveways, of course, and we need to filter this runoff before it goes off to the stream. And this is what happens. This is why we have these small streams being the main source of sediment, is that it just gets ripped out. This guy is in Wake Forest, and everything was cool until they built a great big parking lot uphill from him, and now it starts to erode. And this is a native plant. What's this plant? Who knows what that is? It's juncus. It's a rush. The only thing I learned in horticulture: rushes are round and sedges have edges. I like that. So that is a rush. That's a common rush. It's holding on for dear life. So we could regrade this bank, right, and load it up with rushes or maybe some other native plants. We'll talk about this a little bit. So there's an answer to this, but it needs stabilization. Okay, so property problems, we've got streams cut down. These are in Cary, and this is the tree archive in Cary, across from the YMCA there, and it kind of flows through. And does grass hold stream banks really well? No. Fescue, how deep are fescue roots?
4 inches.
It's like 4 inches, yeah, exactly. All right, you've trained them well. This is good. So we need deep-rooted natives. We need roots, what they call toe wood, right? Wood and roots at the toe of the slope. Grass does not cut it. That's a pun. So, and also people say, oh, I saw a snake, and we're going to weed whack that and take that grass down so we can see the snakes. And what we need is natives, deep-rooted natives. So flooding is an issue. Notice that house is for sale. This is after Hurricane Floyd. Remember Floyd? When was that? 2001, 2000? Yeah, I've got in some areas of North Carolina, we got 30 inches of rain in 24 hours. So this is Kinston, and you'll see the town is over here on high ground, and this is the less densely populated on the low ground. So see that. So Wake County, just to give you an idea of your neighbor here, surveyed a lot of the partnership members. We have a water partnership there. We try to coordinate water quality education, research efforts, and Extension is involved in that. We have some master gardeners there as well. So education and outreach, which is important. Stormwater management is the #1. So everybody says stormwater management is the #1 issue there. Wow. And this is in Wake. With all of these types of things. So, and of course, all of these kind of focus on stormwater management rules and groundwater contamination in wells. but they identify stormwater as the number one. So back to Durham, we did a study a few years ago, and 147 Duke University East Campus is here. Here's the School of Science and Math. So in this little piece of Ellerby Creek, South Ellerby Creek watershed, we've got 44% impervious areas, rooftops and roads, and then 56% grass and open space. So it kind of gives you, if you're familiar with this watershed, we're very close to it. In fact, are we in it?
Yeah.
We're in it. We're in this. So this is this watershed. So you can see this is very typical. So we're 4 times the amount of impervious area where we get water degradation because of impervious area. And if you go on a product, so if you're real techie and you like to kind of research this, you can go to the United States Geologic Survey, USGS, and this is a product called StreamStats. So you can go on StreamStats, USGS StreamStats. You can Google that, and it'll come up, and it'll get you into an area where you can put a dot on the map, and it will show you the watershed that drains to that dot. It's pretty cool. So there's the big watershed. This is Ellerby Creek. This is the big watershed. So in looking at that big watershed, and then doing my own version of education, how can I do this on the cheap? 1 foot square tile that I found on sale for a little price of less than 50 cents at Home Depot, and a 30-gallon brute trash can. If it rains an inch on a square foot, now remember we get 48 or 45 to 50 inches a year, generally over the last 100 years. If it rains an inch on a square foot, 0.63 gallons of runoff. If it rains 45 to 50 inches of rainfall on that square foot, that's a 30-gallon brute trash can. So this is how much runs off this area in a year. Right, so let's go back to Ellerby Creek, and this is from StreamStats again, and we have a 25.7 square mile watershed. That watershed, 25, almost 26 square miles. How many acres in a square mile? Folks from the Midwest know this, because it's set up on squares. It's called a square. 640 acres. I know we have some odd numbers, right? How many square feet in an acre? We can blame this on the Romans. Some emperor had a foot that was a foot long, right? That's where the foot came from. No kidding. And then, what is a pace? What is a Roman pace? Is it 1? That's a pace? No, it's 2. 1, 2. Ever think about why a mile is 5,280 feet? It's because it was 1,000 paces. And that's why a mile is 5,280. Back, I'm old, some of you will remember when we tried to go metric. Was that during Reagan? And we put the kibosh on that. Well, we don't want that. It would have been so much easier, right? It would have been so much easier, but now we're stuck with 12 inches, and this drives my grandkids crazy. It's like I'm teaching them to read a regular analog clock. Imagine, we've been doing it our whole lives, but you know, so what time is it? And they'll go, well, the little hand is, I don't know what that number is. Or why is it 12? You know, why is it 12 inches? You know, it just doesn't make sense logically. But anyway, I digress. 25 square miles times 640 will give you how many acres, and an acre is a football field with the end zones, generally, right? If you want a visual, that's about an acre. 18% impervious. How much did I say before when we start to see degradation in streams, like 10 to 15? So we're right at that point where we're seeing problems. So if you do a little math, right, sorry about this, but 25 square miles, 16,500 acres, take that many acres, multiply by 18% imperviousness, 3,000 acres of concrete and asphalt and rooftop are in this watershed. 3,000 acres. Remember, an acre is a football field with the end zones. And once you drive out of here, look around at all the impervious areas. Once you see this, you'll never unsee it. It's just everywhere. Times that many square feet in an acre, 131 million square feet. All right, square feet. And then that times a 1 inch rain, 0.623 gallons in a 1 inch rain on 1 square foot is 81 million gallons in a 1 inch rain that's going into Falls Lake from Ellerby Creek alone, and there's other watersheds. 81 million gallons. I can't even picture that, but if you divide that number by 7.5, that's how many cubic feet there are in a, or how many gallons there are in a cubic foot of water. So 7.5. So this is just to kind of set it in perspective. There's going to be a test.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
So they're building right now on the headwaters of Ellerby Creek, a huge housing development. Do they look at this? Yeah.
Yes. Well, they don't look at it at this scale, but there are stormwater rules where if it's a new development,
Yeah.
because old development generally is grandfathered in, so they don't. If there was a stormwater control there before, or there wasn't, they don't have to do anything. But if I wanted to build a CVS or Mitch's, used car lot, and it was a field or something that did not have a stormwater control on it, I'd have to put a stormwater control on it, and I'd have to have an engineer in practice, and the city or the county would have to approve it. So this system that we put in this building was here. This is just a kind of an educational thing out here with this rainwater harvester. But if you're going to build a building, you're going to have to do a 1 inch stormwater control. 1 inch because in a year you'll capture 85% of the storms if you have a practice that'll capture an inch of runoff.
So there are ways around it, because it looks like they're building it. I mean, it's the headwaters of Ellerby Creek.
Is there a stormwater control or anything going on out there? The only exception would be if,
I mean, what would I see, a retention pond?
probably a pond,
Yeah.
it could be an infiltration basin. Sometimes they irrigate wooded areas, but generally in Durham, you'll most often probably see a pond.
Yeah.
Now, it's not there at the beginning because it would fill up with sediment.
Right.
It may be just a sediment capture device that will be turned into a pond. So they'll excavate all that sediment out.
Is that a big muddy pond?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that a big muddy pond?
Yeah.
That would be a big muddy pond, a big sediment basin. So a sediment basin is what's there during construction. And so generally all the sediment, or at least some of it's supposed to go in there. And that's when you have your sediment and erosion control people that are supposed to regulate that area. They're notoriously underfunded too in North Carolina.
Right.
So you'll have them run around and they have the ability to slap a notice of violation on a developer to say you have to control sediment better on this. So there's lots of rules out there on sediment, and my own personal feeling is, after looking at this, it's not that the rules are bad, it's just that enforcement is sometimes lacking.
Yeah.
That seems to be the issue. So it has a stormwater control on it. Sometimes you just get into these weird situations where it's an old property that was grandfathered in for whatever reason, and they don't have to do it. And I think that's rare generally. Yeah.
So with those retention ponds that are in new construction housing communities, after it has captured all that stuff, then they fill it in and build on it. Don't they?
They shouldn't.
But they.
Sometimes.
For a fact that has happened in the community.
Yeah, they've actually, boy, I would not want a house built on top of one of those. But what will generally happen is they will have a sediment capture device, like one of these sediment ponds. During the construction, they'll continually scoop that out and take that soil somewhere where they can stabilize that. I don't know if a farm takes it or whatever, and they stabilize that. And then at the end, they'll come in and do a final scoop out, and then they'll turn it into what's called a wet pond, and they're supposed to plant native plants around it, and it'll be a controlled outlet that will go off to like a local stream. The thing is, if they're building buildings on it, they've got to have some stormwater control, because all that water is rushing down to Ellerby. So, and town and city engineers, there's a stormwater department in Durham that deals with this all the time. There's a lot of things going on, so I'm not sure in that case. It'd be interesting to find out. So here's me in my native environment. So stormwater is practices that slow water down, spread it out, and soak it in. So it's what we call the 3 S's. It makes sense, right? Makes sense. So if we had an ideal water-wise landscape, a landscape that would not shed water if it rained an inch, it would look something like this, where we preserve native vegetation. Why mow it down during the construction process? And all the developers do it because it's easy to go out and survey if you mow all the vegetation down. But if we have some trees out there, and those roots are all in that soil, now we have like a pervious sponge, and it really helps. And if you keep the heavy equipment out of there, you don't compact the soil, and the water infiltrates, right? You can amend soils that have been compacted by construction equipment. And we know about amending soils and incorporating organic matter and doing that. We can have rain gardens, we can have rainwater harvesting, we can have vegetated swales along roads and ditches that capture water, right? So if it rains an inch on this property, how much water would run off? Very, very little. And so this is where we're going. It may take a generation to get there. And in some cases, like Wake County, it's too late. We've pretty much built everywhere we can build. And now we're seem to be encroaching on streams more and more. But what you're going to see in the next generation of engineers, and we're teaching those at state, to just employ simple practices like this. Make the lots bigger, right? Make the houses smaller. You can see some of this tiny house kind of stuff that comes out every once in a while. And then control runoff off of this. We're battling politics, and we're battling big money developers and a lot of things with this. But it is impacting our water, so there's a way to deal with this. The science is clear though. If you put a little house on a big lot and have practices like this, you're not gonna have stormwater runoff. But now we get into affordable housing issues, right? And I'm not gonna get into that today. But if you put a little house on a big lot, now you're spending a lot of money on that lot, and not too many people are gonna be able to afford that. And we have affordable housing issues all over. So what can be done? I'll talk about stream bank repair a little bit, but rainwater harvesting and rain gardens and downspout disconnection are some of the things that we talk about out here. So again, green stormwater infrastructure is rainwater harvesting, big muddy ponds that are practices now that look like this, where we have native plants surrounding this, and that actually is an amenity, right? Hopefully, we have pervious pavement. This is on NC State campus. That is an infiltration basin by the School of Design. So if you walk across NC State campus, it's a beautiful little area where plants are in like rain gardens that instead of shedding the water, trap and infiltrate the water. And this is the Museum of Art and Science on Blue Ridge Road. You can walk, anybody been there and walked out back and see the native prairie, and they have native trees, and it goes down to a wetland in the back with this design. They had a lot of money to design that. It's like engineers went wild on that. But the water flows off to here, travels, goes through here, travels, goes over here, travels, comes out here, and goes into a wetland. Gives the water a lot of opportunity to drop the sediment and to be infiltrated. Yeah?
Is brick considered permeable, like a brick walk? I don't know if that is a brick walk versus the squares that have the hole in the middle.
It depends on what's under it. If you've got washed stone that's a foot or several feet thick, then, and you don't fill that interstitial space, that space between the bricks with what's called crusher run, which is basically ground stone, which it can be. And water infiltrates instead of runs off. You could easily find out, drop a hose on it and see if it does this, because this is failing. This is failing. This is failing. So generally, no. Brick sidewalks are, because they have compacted stone bases. A good example is, is the Friday Center of UNC campus. If you go there, that's a pervious concrete parking lot. The water goes down through the concrete and it's stored underneath the parking lot. So if you're up at the Friday Center, you can kind of go around and look at that, and that's pervious.
There's a tank under there?
I'm sorry?
Are you saying there's a tank under there?
There's no tank. It's just filled with about 5 feet of stone. And it slowly leaks to the bottom and goes out into a wooded buffer by the stream. So it gives it a lot of opportunity to slow it down and soak it in, and it spreads it out under the parking lot.
Interesting.
So it's really cool. But you can see how that would be pretty expensive to do, right? And if I was to dig out your sidewalk, I'd go down 2 or 3 feet, fill it up with stone, and put brick on top of it. That's also an expensive undertaking. New developments, though, we're going to take into account this green stormwater infrastructure. And we'll show you, there's new development, and then there's existing. Existing development, we're looking at rainwater harvesting and irrigation, infiltration, or rain gardens. It's basically the 2 practices that you can employ easily and cheaply. You had a question.
Thank you. Yeah, when you have these big muddy ponds and then you install you see sometimes that people put fountains in them.
Yes.
How does that affect their ability to kind of let the sediment fall out like it's supposed to?
I am unclear on the fountain idea. I think they can go anaerobic, and they're trying to incorporate some oxygen into that to maybe try to keep the fish alive. It will stir up some sediment. A lot of it drops out though, but it can, if it's shallow enough, kind of stir that sediment up. It's not a sediment treatment device if you have a fountain in there. The only reason for the fountain is to keep it from going anaerobic, like sometimes it'll smell kind of swampy, or they try to keep the fish alive.
But if there are no fish, it's a smell issue then?
I think sometimes it's probably when it goes anaerobic, yeah. But generally, the ones that I've seen have been a fish issue. And the problem with the fountains is that they're notoriously undersized for the water body. You'll see these fountains in a great big lake, and it's not doing much. Not doing much at all. So green stormwater infrastructure. Native plants, you all know about native plants. Deeply rooted, they're adapted to our heat and moisture. And so we can really promote the use of native plants in a lot of these practices. I won't go into this. Streamside buffers. Buffers in North Carolina, depending on what watershed you're in, and the Noose and the Cape Fear, they are protected. You've got to protect vegetation down by the stream sides because all those roots hold all that soil. If you want to see danger, rip all this out and put in turf grass, right? And there's about 700 landscape companies in Wake County because everybody's trying to grow grass in the woods. I always tell people, when you walk through the woods, take a walk through the woods. Have you ever seen grass growing in the woods? No, but that's what we're trying to do. And they're throwing pesticides on it. We have a colleague who calls turf grass the toxic green carpet, right? And I'm going to pick on you golfers. I'm a golfer. My parents are golfers, but I go about 1 time every 5 years, so I'm awful when I go out. In fact, the last time I went out with my parents, I was whipped bad by like a 90-year-old Korean War vet, and he had 1 eye. And he whooped me. But I played. They said, what's your average? And I said, I have no idea. They're like, what? And I said, well, put me down for 120. I don't even keep score. It's a great day. I just go ahead and hit the ball around. But look at the Masters that's coming up. And I watch the Masters, it's kind of fun to click on, but everybody sees those, you know what I'm talking about, the green expanses of grass and a beautifully, and everybody goes, and everybody goes out and buys a bag of Scott's fertilizer and tries to make it look like Augusta. And it's just, boy, it's a losing battle, but they sell a lot of fertilizer. So we need native streamside plants. The thing is, they don't look beautiful. They look kind of messy, right? And it's our vision of what beauty is, right? So we want roots. See, here's fescue here. And we want natives.
Yeah.
Right, so you have Hoffman's Nursery near here. Love them. I get trays of Panicum variegatum, native switchgrass, and I put them up where it's.
Just a shout out
Wholesale.
that they're wholesale, but they sell at a lot of our local nurseries where you can buy plants.
Yes. Now I buy from them.
And their catalog is just beautiful. It is
Izzle.
worth looking through their online catalog just to learn about native grasses.
And I.
It's called
Hoffman Nursery.
You can, yeah, Hoffman. They're in. How do you pronounce it? Bahama.
Yeah.
Okay. And they do have a retail outlet that's combined with other wholesale nurseries like Hoffman, and it's called Izzle, I-Z-L-E, I believe, or E-L.
Yeah.
Izzle, I-Z-E-L. And if you go on there, you can buy trays of native brush, sedges, grasses. They specialize in grasses. And I love Panicum variegatum.
And the great thing about buying trays, especially if you're buying plugs, so plugs are plants that if you're used to buying big gallons, you're going to be disappointed because you're going to get a guy that's like this big and like 3 leaves on top. But increasingly, all the research is showing that root to leaf ratio is beautiful for setting plants up really well. You're going to buy like 100 of them. Half of them are going to survive, but they're going to be the prettiest, biggest plants you ever would have imagined, and it's going to be cheaper and do better. You just have to give it a year or two.
Yeah, and that's been my experience.
The plant Izzle.
So it's Hoffman Nursery. You can buy trays through Izzle or Izzle, but just look at a bunch of different plants. Check out Hoffman Nursery's website though for their plant lists of a lot of what they sell. They're a wholesaler, but they just sell all the beautiful grasses and a lot of native grasses, and it's just phenomenal.
And I bought a tray of Panicum,
Yeah.
or switchgrass, I mean synonymous. And I think I got a tray of 36 for about $3 each.
Yeah.
So it's about $100, $120. They ship it to you UPS. You don't go up, I guess you go up and pick it up. But they ship it to you and they come and they're great. I just unwrap it, throw it in the shade for a couple days, water it till they get out of shock, throw it out in the sun, water it, get them going, right, this time of year. And then I transplant them along our stream projects. I have a little native switchgrass garden that I've got, along with the tomatoes and other things, so kind of
Is
experiment.
Sorry, Mitch, yours mostly shade, or is it sun?
It's sun, they're in bright sun
Oh, okay.
with no irrigation. I mean, I irrigate them the first year.
And the thing I'll say about Hoffman has stuff for both, so I check it out. But just because I'd be bad if I didn't mention it, they did donate a number of plants for our garden out front, and I know they've donated plants to like the Hub Garden, so they're good in the community too.
Yeah, they're great, they're great. So, here we are at a church, and there's a septic system between where I am digging out the grass and the building. So they're very concerned about losing their septic system. And so here, you see now this is the stream, this is western North Carolina. So very shallow roots, you can see I ripped that one out there, and they're very excited about controlling that bank. And so how do you do that? Well, how many of you are familiar with live staking? Okay, so maybe we need to have like a stream class up here sometime. We don't have time to do it today, but we've done it around in this area with the Ellerby Creek Association Foundation. But these are silky willow, silky dogwood, coral berry, 9-bark, native plant. And as my grandfather on the farm used to say, these are root on a billiard ball.
What?
They are root on a billiard ball. Right? So This is how you buy these from a native plant nursery. We get these from Foggy Mountain Nursery up near Boone. We get these from Mellamarsh Farm in Siler City. And we get these cuttings, these are 2 feet long, and we stick these into stream banks like that, and they will root,
Wow.
and they will root.
And, sorry, Mitch, what are they called again?
Live staking.
But that's a plant right there.
Yeah, that is a cutting off a plant. These are silky dogwood, the red ones,
Silky dog.
and these are silky willows.
Okay.
And we drive them into the bank with a hammer, or just stick them into the ground about 3/4 of the way in. And below the surface they root, and above the surface they send out a little sprig. So here I am fixing a stream bank in Winston, and I'm down in the mud having a great time. It's about 28 degrees. So yeah, it's better than being in the office though. I love it. So I'm down, here I am, farm boy. I just get to play in the mud. It's in our genes. So there we are, and this is coir. I won't get into this, but we have put these stakes. These are fascines, which are long lips of the stakes, and these are live stakes. We use both, and I make what we call a brush mattress. Stick that in the mud, cover it with some coir, which is coconut, stake it in with some hardwood stakes, and this is a way that you can do small-scale repairs with stream banks. Now you got to be careful with streams, because who owns the water in your stream? The government. As my grandfather would say, it's a government that owns it. It's considered waters of the state or waters of the United States. You are not allowed to, I'm allowed to do this. I mean, I can walk around it. I can put native plants along the bank all day long. But can I dam this up? Can I throw rock in here? I need a permit to do that. I need a permit. So, and it's Army Corps of Engineers. So now you're really dealing with the government. The Army Corps comes out, nice folks, and they'll say, no, you can't do that, but I can do this. Right? And I can do this as long as I work above ordinary high water. Again, I'm just kind of dipping, as they say, dipping your toe into this kind of subject area.
Do you have pictures of what it looks like once it's?
I'll show you, yes, I'll show you. So this is the day of the install. You kind of walk away from it and you go, what did I do? Because, you look at it, now the good news is that's about $300. That's about $300 what I did, not counting my time as an extension professional. Right? And people will call and say, I've got all these weeds. I've got English ivy, I've got kudzu, I've got all this stuff along the stream bank. I want to kill it all. And I say, I feel you, but you may not want to do it all at once because it may be the only thing holding the bank together. If you kill it all, you're going to get bare soil, and then it's going to wash. So maybe a staged approach. You need to be careful on streams. That's why I'm talking about this, because there's invasives, there's exotics, there's all that stuff out there. It's a big problem in North Carolina. I mean, $120 billion a year across the United States. You gotta be careful about pesticide use in and around water too. Like for example, you can't spray Roundup around streams. You've gotta use a product called rodeo. And if you spray for someone else, you need a commercial pesticide license. If you're spraying on your own property, you don't. So there's some rules there that you get into. All right, so let's talk about the easiest practice that you can employ in a residential area to control runoff from the stream. So you've seen the problems it's created, right? Let's back up a little bit and talk about these small-scale solutions. What if, and this was in Durham, this project was in Durham, a lot of pipes were piped directly to the street for some reason in this area. And so what we did in this study was we lopped that pipe off and we just let it run out across the yard. We got a 90% stormwater reduction by doing that. And it didn't cost a thing, just a couple minutes to locate the pipe and cut it off. You get a 90% reduction just by allowing the water to run out. So these are some of the studies we did in Durham a couple years ago. So is that a good thing? Yes. Now, why has the opposite been promoted? Piping that to the road. Why would you want to do that? Well, now I've got a wet area in my yard, and the mower gets stuck. Or you definitely wanna keep the water away from the foundation in your house, right? You don't wanna have a wet crawl space, cause then that leads to a lot of bad things that you shouldn't be dealing with. So, if we can, and this is just a patio, like a carport, this is a stormwater control practice, and this can absorb 90% of the runoff from the roof area. If everybody was doing this, instead of sending it to the street. We've had cities, for example, in Cary, we have pipes coming out of this one development. You know what the town did? They got a can of that expanding foam and shot it up in the pipe, and they said, well, when people call and complain, we'll know who it is. And they made them take those off. So you're not supposed to do that. So what about this? This is out at the Hub Farm. Anybody been to the Hub Farm here? Yeah. This is around the corner. So I think that's the library around back. This is a big gym. That is called a grass swale. That's a great practice because it captures water off the roof in the parking lot, sends it down this area, and it's low maintenance, right? We can mow it. Now, as an option, you could fill this up with native plants. You could call it a long rain garden, or what the engineers call a bioswale. Fill it up with natives. So if you had something like this in your yard, this is a stormwater practice. There's nothing wrong with this. It's loaded with microstesium, right? But it works, and it's not contributing sediment downhill. So connected downspouts to run to a stream or to a road, we need to disconnect those and run them out into the grass, just not near the house, because you don't want water in the house. So instead of running these pipes out to the stream in the upper left, we just allow the water to run across this yard, because it used to be here, so we disconnected it and let it run across there. And we were absorbing the water. I'll tell you that the homeowner wasn't real happy because that backyard was in the shade and it was muddy for about a week after a good rain. But because it was in the shade, the grass didn't grow much anyway. The liriope, again, it'll grow in a billiard ball too, so it was happy. This is a stormwater practice where we disconnected that pipe because there's no treatment occurring here. No treatment there. What about maintaining an area of mature vegetation in a yard that's already there when you build the house? Easiest thing in the world, right? I don't know, well, I grew up in a family of farmers and skilled tradespeople, plumbers, electricians, and all that. I can tell you what happened here. They had the building lot, gonna put a house on it, and they just said, you know what, that patch of trees is okay, let's just leave it. I don't feel like cutting it down. You know, they gotta get out the chainsaw, spend the day out there dragging all those trees out of there, then grind the stumps. They left it. It is a cool stormwater practice, and they didn't have to do a thing. We've had this happen again and again and again. Now, can you see where we're going with this in the future? If you're a developer and you've got 35 acres that you're gonna put 120 houses on, you're gonna need a practice like this on every one of them to control the stormwater runoff. This is a rain garden, that's what this is. So you can either make it, or maybe send it off into a wooded area, or maybe capture the water in a tank like we have out here and spray it out into a wooded area. And now you're turning your development into a zero discharge, or what's called a conservation development. This is where this is all going. This is what the engineering department is teaching students now. To send it through the soil instead of sending it to the stream. So that's great, it didn't cost a dime.
And what types of engineers, like where are they called?
There would be stormwater engineers. So it's a segment of civil engineering.
Okay.
So, you know, civil engineers build bridges and roads, and they are employed by our Department of Transportation. So engineers are a valuable commodity. Every time I drive across a bridge, I thank God there's engineers, right? Because you go to some countries where the engineering is lax, and it's scary. You see these buildings collapse in areas where there's earthquakes, right? And then in San Francisco, they sway, but they don't fall down. Engineers love them. Registered landscape architects too. They also are licensed to do this kind of stuff. And they work with the contractors and the landscapers to put these in. So the engineers and our landscape architects plan these and design these, and then we need trained landscapers to maintain them. Because, you know, one of these trees falls down, an engineer's not gonna come out there, because they call a landscaper. So the point about this is, we kind of have that system, but there's money to be made in employment at all those levels. So,
Do you, well, as master gardeners, we're not supposed to recommend particular businesses, but can you point folks like me to resources where someone would actually come to my yard and help me establish a rain garden or talk to me about an area I'm thinking of?
it's a challenge. Do you have any landscapers that are putting these in?
Because some people, yeah.
So what we recommend here is, because for example, when we installed our second cistern, part of that process was to train landscape designers and those sort of folks to be able to install those systems, because it's hard to find them. But what I will say is that here in Durham County, our soil and water conservation district folks are really good, and they do a lot of homeowner level practices. And so typically, when we get questions about rain gardens, about stormwater, about that kind of stuff, we can answer to some degree. But we also say, hey, there's a whole other group of folks in the county, soil and water, that helps you deal with this, that has those lists, can make those recommendations, can come out and look at things. And like, for example, you know, if you talk about rainwater harvesting, our soil and water folks do have, for example, some grant money they can give for cost share on even like cisterns. If you were previously draining from your roof directly into basically the street or someplace like that, and you can disconnect, they can give you money. So I mean, typically we direct people to soil and water, and I'll send that information in the email today, how you contact those folks, because they're really like good in this county.
It can be, the frustrating part of this, and that's a very good question that you asked. The frustrating part of this is it can be hit and miss. I mean, you call up like Jim's Landscaping,
Right.
and you'll say, hey, I'm interested in putting in a rain garden. And you might get, oh, I went to extension training, I'm certified. And we do have that workshop, and we can hold that here for master gardeners or for anybody, happy to do that. Or you may get, what? And so we've trained over 500 landscapers in the state to do rain gardens. I don't think it is a primary source of business for them. They're still into mowing and blowing off lawns and fertilizing. I think that's their bread and butter. We're trying to get them interested in stream bank repair too. This is going to come as things get mandated, because stormwater practices are mandated, but rain gardens are not, especially on new construction, or old construction, I'm sorry, and especially on older existing construction. If you have a house now, you don't have to put one in. But the reason we have stormwater engineers is if I'm gonna build a CVS pharmacy, I have to have stormwater controls on it. So I need to hire an engineer. And so that drives our graduates to get hired by engineering firms for top dollar. So a lot of these are you know, voluntary practices.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
I wanted to ask you a question about that guy that is in the shade, that you mitigated the water to go into the lawn. Could you have done like, take all those downspouts and make not a totally impervious surface, but maybe a rubber bottom, very low, and create a pond, / not pond, because you're not going crazy with cement and stuff. But can you do that and then encourage like a whole another ecosystem there with little frogs and?
I'd rather see like a rain garden that would have a soil bottom.
Yeah.
So when the water from this area went into that, right, now it has a chance to soak in within 3 or 4 days,
Yeah.
which is a rule of thumb for rain gardens. So that now we're ready for the next storm. The problem with lining it is it's going to stay there. And then also too, you have to watch urban mosquitoes, because so the mosquito specialist tells me the recipe for mosquitoes is standing water and shade.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a swampy wetland area, mosquitoes. Sun, you won't have mosquitoes. or you keep invasives out like cattails and phragmites, then you won't have mosquitoes. So native plants will keep them out, the sun will keep them out. And we've seen it again and again. So I do a rain garden or a wet one. You could have a wet one,
Yeah.
which is wet all the time, and put water-loving plants down in there.
That eat mosquitoes.
Yes, yeah, gambusia, which is a little fish, frogs, dragonflies, all of that, yeah.
It may just be an incorrect perception, but it almost looks as if the slope of that land is coming, it looks as if that water is running down towards that concrete, base right there.
It's actually running along the wall, hitting this, and this was my idea, right? Creating like a little trench, and now it fills up this trench and then it flows across the yard, because it used to just flow and then here. The house is over here, so it's actually flowing down to this area. The thing is, you see the bare soil, you know, trying to keep the sediment out. And feel free to, because I want to keep you on time, we're at 10
Maybe
after.
just like,
So let me go
let's do
through,
the capture section.
okay.
Are you gonna do cisterns next maybe?
Yes. So let's go through this. I've given Ashley the slides, so you can step down through this. So let me kind of put it in high gear here. They could be big, or small, they could be big. 60 gallons, that's 550 gallons. And you've got to watch out because HOAs generally do not like these because it's a big agricultural kind of looking tank. You can paint them, you can cover them. I've wrapped some in chicken wire and just had vines grow up or native plants. So they can be hidden. The thing is, it's not used in the house, it's used outside for potable water, for irrigation, washing the German Shepherd, washing the cars. The point is, 75% of the treated drinking water in Falls Lake in the summer is used for outside irrigation and not drinking. So Raleigh and Wake County is very excited about this type of stuff. The only problem is, the impediment is, and it's a big one, they don't trust homeowners to maintain these systems because of mosquitoes. They don't trust you. So that's the dilemma that we find ourselves in. So 600 gallon system, I think that looks great. I mean, maybe I could paint it to hide it a little bit. Okay.
How do you get the water out of there? Is there a pump?
There is a, it's a little hard to see, this is a filter, and all the downspouts on this side of the house come in here, and there's a pump in here. And the line runs out and it's hooked to her irrigation system.
And where do you get a cistern like that?
I get these at Agri Supply, which is a local farm retailer, kind of like the Home Depot of farm supply. Agri Supply, or online Tank Depot. I will tell you that with inflation and fuel prices, these tanks have like doubled in cost. That's 5 years ago, that was a 500 gallon tank, and now it's almost 1,000. So it's a killer to this.
$1,000?
Yeah, yeah. But this could be 100, 120.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I would say, like, get with soil and water before you do anything like this, because again, they often have cost share for these tanks. So like for,
We could use 50 gallons for $60.
yeah, you can get those for real cheap. And like this 800 gallon tank out here, when we installed it, I think I got $600 back. So.
Yeah. So look around, sometimes there's specials. You can daisy chain these tanks together, but then of course you have a lot of these.
I mean, can you bury that?
No, not this particular one. You can get the ones that you can bury, but the cost is doubled because they have to have thicker reinforcement. And then there's the expense. Hardly anybody does that because now you have to hire a contractor and dig a hole. You have to have a survey so you don't hit underground utilities or a septic system.
And what did you mean that has a, I mean, I know what you mean. When you say there's a pump in there, it comes with that, or that was put in there so that the water could be pumped out?
It's put in here. You can buy kits. If you want to kind of explore what's out there, and again, this is a single source vendor, but they're huge. They're like the Walmart of rainwater harvesting. It's called rainharvest.com. And they have pumps and tanks and filters. A lot of this comes from Australia
Wow.
because you are mandated by the government
Yeah. Yeah.
to capture stormwater. So there's a positive incentive. And guess where else you have to do it by law? Bermuda.
Huh.
Think of it. Think
That's
of where
good.
that is.
Yeah.
You have to capture 75% of your water. So I took my bride there on our 30th anniversary, and we spent one day. She must really like me because she was so annoyed. Here we are on our 30th anniversary. We were running around town looking at systems with a local engineer I ran into at a bar. Imagine that. So it was like, oh, come on, we'll show you. They capture it off the rooftops. They send it into big cisterns, and you have to capture 75% of your water use annually because they live on an island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. If salt water gets in their wells, they're done. So that's why they do that. So let me go. Black is better. Green. Don't get the white ones. You're gonna have to paint them because you'll have an algae form. And this is my trailer. That's a 500-gallon tank and a 300-gallon tank. Back in the day, this was $400. And you have to have a little plumbing knowledge. There's no pipes coming in or out. You kind of have to cut the holes and put fittings. Not bad. The city had, and this is Durham, or maybe it was the county. Laura Webb Smith had rain catchers. It was a rain catchers program. I think that program was coming on. But you could get these tanks at cheap, connect them together at the bottom, so now they act as one tank, right? The downspouts cut, you put them right in the top. The thing is, it's pricey. That's a 200-gallon tank, and it's about $400. Right, so, but that comes from the Southwest. We have a pump in there, and, you know. And this is a leftover tank. This is at a community garden in Raleigh.
That's cool.
And yeah, the kids came out there and painted that with the teachers. This is a vacant lot. See, downtown Raleigh is right there. It's one of the like Red Hat amphitheaters, like right there. So it's right in the shadow of downtown. And they use this to irrigate the garden. This is 6,000 gallons of storage.
Wow.
And they capture that off. There's a Presbyterian church over here about 100 yards away, and the water we have going into the tanks. Kind of a cool system. It goes underground and comes back up. I won't go into that, but you can do that. Don't picture tanks like pipes hanging over in the air like 100 yards long. You can drive water into tanks using gravity. Rain gardens, I'll go through really quick. Rooftops, next to pervious areas, parking lots, you can put these in and reduces flow, increases water infiltration. Here's the opposite view of that house that I showed you with the trees that they preserved. That's what they can look like. And now you can picture this without the trees, and I think it will look just as nice. We put some natives in there. I think the reason they didn't, and I think it's loaded up with rhododendrons now because of the shade, but you could put, it's the south side of the house. You could put some Virginia sweetspire in there, maybe some Rebecca, some black-eyed Susan, loaded up with some native grasses. So you could see that, right? Switchgrass, black-eyed Susan. We have a rain garden manual online. The Chatham County office with Charlotte Glenn. She has, and that's where we go. Any questions you get on rain gardens, go to that site in Chatham County. She's got our old presentations, PowerPoints. If you Google, well, in any search engine, that's just an old habit, NCSU Rain Garden Manual. We have plant lists, we have designs, we have how to do it. So Rain Garden Manual, NC State or NCSU, and you can picture this. So this is what I picture. So you can do that here without those trees.
Well, they could still do it with trees. I mean, they could still.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
if you wanted to put one of these in a front yard,
Yeah.
just visualize that mulched area as something like that, right? I wouldn't go with crepe myrtle. They like dry feet, right? Yeah, I'm not a strong plant person. You can go with a native seed mix. Mellamarsh Farm will have it. My favorite though, online, is a place called Ernst Seeds. E-R-N-S-T. Ernst. I used to work for Penn State Extension back in the day, and Ernst was right around the corner. What I like about Ernst is you can get local North Carolina ecotype seeds, Southern seeds, do well in North Carolina, and they have a fantastic education center. If you wanna learn about wildflower mixes, and here we are in Carrboro at a school, see our cisterns? Captures water off the roof, goes into cisterns, drains out to a rain garden. And that's what you get there. You can get pollinator mixes, you can get shade mixes, you can get sun mixes, you can get dry land mixes. So go to Ernst Seeds, go to their education center.
And they have shade mixes too.
They have all kinds of stuff, yeah. Just remember, there's a lot of plants that like sun. There's a lot of plants that like wet. There's not a lot of plants that like wet and shade. That's the problem we're having with these. So this is great. Ernst Seeds, go to their education center. I don't know what's going on with this, but we've got a rain garden down here that it looks really nice. It looks really nice. So, now people will look at these and go, I don't like that. It looks kind of, yeah.
Messy.
Yeah, and I said, well, so you'll get one camp saying it's a stormwater treatment device, and they just love it. There are other people say, I don't really, not a fan. Here's the pipe coming from the rooftop. So it's a wet area anyway. You could dress this up. See, here's some willows in here, some juncus or sedge. So the plant creative types among us will look at that and go, boy, I could dress that up and it would look like really nice, right? So the size of this is 10% of the area of the roof or the driveway draining to it. That's how you size these things. Go to 10 by 10 rule. 10% of the size of the area draining to it and 10 inches deep. And you have an inlet and you have an outlet. I don't know where the outlet is, but I don't think it is. But when this fills up during a big storm, it will drain out and go out beyond and under the fence. Okay, and little pockets. I won't talk about stream repair, I'll just show some pictures. Typical problem, somebody saw a snake and sprayed Roundup. Problems like this. Can you do this? It's concrete. You allowed to do that? The simple answer is no, you can't do that. Can't do that. Can you do this? No, I don't know how they got that permitted. So what we did was, we fixed this by putting out coir and putting in live stakes. Here's live stakes, here's whips, and coir, this is coconut. Here's a stream bank in Raleigh where we were working on. We put matting down, put our whips and fascines in. This is how I store them. I just throw them in the ditch or in the stream. I apologize for going fast. Just need to get through this so you can get on to the next thing. This is best done in the winter of the year. December through the end of February. When they start to bud out, it gets to be a little late.
Mitch, where do you get the coir or coir sheets?
You can get this at a commercial landscape supplier.
I mean, I've seen blocks of coir, but I've never seen those sheets like
Yeah, you can get this. These are best located at a commercial landscape supply house.
Oh.
There's a lot of those around. This came from Green Resource. Green Resource. Yeah, they're around. They can deliver, but mainly you've got to go pick these up. It comes in 160-foot long rolls though, and larger. 6 feet wide, 160 feet long for $160. Right? If you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, you can find like this Excelsior, like a little homeowner size, like roll. The thing is, it has plastic netting in it. You can't use that down by streams.
Yeah, no.
So you almost are forced into going in with a neighbor. What some municipalities are doing is they are making stream side buffer bags where you'll say, can I get a kit with native plants and stakes and coir that'll fix 100 foot of stream? Do I need to? Yeah, okay. All right. And so that's a good idea too. So that's what it looks like. That's the cost, right? But look at all the plants. All right, so Patty's got okay, this is before and after, last one. This is in a park, a rodent bank. So we went with silky willow here. So we put a row of silky willow whips. We drove live stakes in between. and we put a cord, coir cord, kind of wrapped around each stake, held it to the bank, and a year later it looked like that. And 3 years later, we've got the students going down and harvesting the whips, and then we put those on other stream sites. You can harvest 30 to 50% of the plants. And they're nice and fresh, right? You stick those in the bank, they're down in the water, and they will root. They will root. I'll just kind of flip through here. All right, so we won't go into this, but there are some tools online. How's my watershed? You can look on this, a watershed wiki. So you can go to EPA, how's my watershed, or stream stats, and you can look this up, so. Okay, so I need to